I sat down and I wrote this piece of content about my morning routine. I wrote it as like a falsity, like this is my fake morning routine, but I made people lean in and be like, this guy sucks. And then I kind of flipped it in the back and I was like, hey, this isn't actually what my morning routine is. This is more like what my morning routine is. I normally fail at the perfect one and I normally kind of hit this mediocre one. And for some reason, I don't know why, that resonated very deeply. And instead of getting a 30 or 40 engagements, it got something like 15,000. Mm-hmm. I don't think of my business as scalable. Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. Like it's intentionally non-scalable. That's right. People talk about revenue a lot. And I think less about revenue. I think more about profit. Yes. I think about margins. And I think about really lifestyle first, business second. Yeah.
Today's guest is proof that you don't need a huge team, a big office, or even VC money to build a powerhouse business. Justin Welsh went from a startup exec to one-person content empire.
I don't think that knowledge should be limited to people based on their economic capability. I do purchase power parity, which means I try and bring it down, let's say 80% if you're in that country. Because I want to make sure that if you're in India or Pakistan or Nigeria or Mexico or wherever you're living, that you can get it at an equivalent price so that you don't feel like you don't have access to that knowledge. And I think if you sell digital products, you're missing a lot of revenue, happy customers, word of mouth. If you don't do that, you've recorded the product already.
This is Creator Commerce, where the most successful creators break down how they turn content into commerce. If you're a creator and ready to become your own CEO and own your own audience, your revenue, and your future, keep listening. Justin Welsh, welcome to Creator Commerce.
Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely, this is great.
It's great to be here.
No, thanks, dude. So we always like to kick it off with a question. How do you describe what you do to people outside of your industry?
Yeah, it's something I actually struggle with after doing it for 6 years. When people ask me what I do in my hometown, I just tell them I'm a writer because it keeps it really easy. But the easiest way for me to describe it is I help people take all the knowledge, the skills and experience that they've accumulated over the course of their career, the stuff they've got up here, bring it online and help them earn money from that.
Yeah. We have one commonality. We're both from Northeast Ohio. Yeah. How does a kid from Northeast Ohio, like what was your journey to where you are? Like, well, I'm fascinated by your background and all the different things you've done and how it's kind of turned into this thriving online business.
Yeah. It's a long story with a couple of different acts, but I'll kind of give you the high level of how I went through it. So the first 7 years of my career were pretty terrible, to be quite honest. Like I was a really immature person in his 20s. And so from 21 to 28, I tried to do kind of what my dad did, which was get into pharmaceutical sales. And then eventually I was going to work my way into medical device sales. I did that in a really strange way, which is I got fired from the first job I had within, I think, 12 months. Got a new job, got fired again 3 years later after not performing very well, got a third pharmaceutical job, got fired again, found myself finally in medical devices as a territory associate. So someone as a demotion almost to like what you might call like an SDR in the sales world at age 26 or 27 and got fired again. And so my career at 28, this was like my first act, was what I would call pretty terrible. So I was sitting alone at my house in Novelty, Ohio, 28 years old, fired a bunch of times and didn't really know what I was going to do with myself. So I did what any, I guess, savvy person might do. I don't know how savvy I was at the time, but I kind of rejiggered a little elbow grease on the resume, made my previous roles look a little bit.
Some embellishing.
Yeah, a little bit of embellishing, right?
As a writer does.
Put it on monster.com back in the day. This was 2009. Yeah. And I got a call from a 10-person startup in Manhattan. And they were like, hey, we're looking for our second sales guy here in New York City. And I had zero money. And I went in, I took a bus from, I think, outside of Philadelphia, got hired and slept on my friend's couch for a year.
Oh my gosh.
And for some reason, this is like act 2 of my career, my personality, my maturity, the company, the people, the product, everything was just right. And it kind of all intersected at one time. And I thrived. I went out, I sold a deal on my first day. I became salesman of the quarter. They promoted me, moved me across the country multiple times. And this was the start of my ascension. And I turned that into sort of my first executive role here in Santa Monica nearby. I was the VP of sales for a small company. Thought I would get them to 1 million in revenue. Ended up getting them to 70 million over 4.5 years. And won a bunch of awards and was really, really thrilled with that experience. Late 2018, I think it was December 16th, I had been really working myself poorly. I was eating too much, drinking too much, sleeping not very much at all. Felt like Tetris, like all these pieces were falling and like I couldn't move them fast enough, and I was, burning out. And I had a panic attack, a really, really bad one on a Saturday morning. And I had to go to my boss and say, I don't think I can do this anymore.
Wow.
And he asked, could I stay a little longer? It ended up being about 8 months. And I said, sure. And on August 1st of 2019, I left my role, and I had no idea what I was going to do before doing that. So I started writing content online and sharing all the things that I had learned building this software business in Santa Monica to 70 million in recurring revenue. And for 6 months, I did that before I left. And I started getting these inbound leads via LinkedIn. All these companies saying, hey, we're building a healthcare company too. Can you show me how to do a go-to-market? Can you help me figure out my sales commission plan? And when I left in August, I had a bunch of pipeline built up. And I started my business on August 1st. I signed 5 clients, and that was the beginning of what I would consider my online business, which has gone through many iterations since.
That's fascinating. When you think about the content you were building, so you're burnt out after like a pretty interesting career, like some fits and starts, but you figured it out. You're humming along. You have this panic attack. When you thought about the content, were you thinking this is the thing I want to do, or was this just like your brain kind of doing what some brains do? Is like I want to do this for myself. Like, what was that thought process like?
I had no thought process of it being long term. There was no like, I'm gonna start this way, and then it's gonna morph into that, and then I'm gonna start like zero, right?
Okay.
So the whole intention was I was gonna take 6 months off, and then I was gonna go back to do what I know how to do, which was build software businesses as a VP of sales. But I thought, hey, if I can just like get a gap of 6 months and fill that with some revenue and some income so that I'm not burning through my savings, I'll be in a better position to feel like I can be, kind of picky or choosy in my next role. And when I started creating content, I was trying to decide, do I go on Twitter or do I go on LinkedIn? Do I start a YouTube channel? And I was really nervous because I hadn't put myself out there, and I'm a relatively introverted guy to begin with. And I saw LinkedIn as a place where everyone was like, here's my resume and I got a new job, but there was like, no one was creating like thought leadership content at that point in time. So I was like, oh, I'll do that. And when I saw the power of that, and when I saw inbound leads, and when I saw engagement and CEOs reaching out to me and saying, can you help me? I was like, oh, this could be interesting. This could be maybe more than 6 months. But at that moment, I saw zero potential or opportunity for this to be a career.
Is there any piece of content or something put out there that like really took fire and you're like, gosh, this can turn into something real? Or was it like almost everything was hitting and different audiences resonating with different pieces of content?
So I was writing mostly about like, how do you build a healthcare software business, which is nothing about like, I don't talk about any of that stuff anymore. I haven't for many, many years. But I was looking around at some people who were creating content, and there was like, back in the day, it was just like Gary Vee and me and like a couple of other people. And I noticed that some people weren't creating what you might consider thought leadership. They were creating more for engagement and fun. And so I sat down and I wrote this piece of content about my morning routine, right? Which is like super cliche now to say, but I wrote it as like a falsity. Like, this is my fake morning routine, but I made people lean in and be like, this guy sucks, right? Like, this guy wakes up at 4, works out, like does all this stuff. And then I kind of flipped it in the back and I was like, hey, this isn't actually what my morning routine is. This is more like what my morning routine is. I normally fail at the perfect one, and I normally kind of hit this mediocre one. And for some reason, I don't know why, that resonated very deeply. And instead of getting a 30 or 40 engagements, it got something like 15,000. And I was overwhelmed with inbound leads of a different kind, of people asking, how'd you write that? Or where'd that idea come from? Or how can I write something similar? And I was like, oh, that's really interesting, because this has nothing to do with healthcare businesses. And so that was like my first like kind of spark moment where I was like, oh, content creation can be fun and rewarding. And of course, quite a dopamine hit at the same time.
It was really cool. I remember we see your stuff on LinkedIn all the time. And it would be kind of almost like a joke. Like, you make fun of like type A aggro person who wakes up and does all these things in the morning. Then you actually went into like detail what your day is actually like. And I think that human element of it probably resonated with people quite a bit. As you thought about the direction your content was taking, right? Part of seemed like the market was like, hey, help me with something about healthcare tech related. And part of the market was, talk to me about your process and your systems of like writing and kind of distributing content. How did you make the call between going left or right? Or is it a combination now? Like, how do you think about the stuff you're doing?
Yeah, it was actually really confusing. And it's still to this day, the number one question that I get from people is like, I'm a multifaceted person. I like Italian food and I like, designing logos. Can I talk about both? And maybe, right? Like I tried really hard to be like, I'm a healthcare SaaS guy, but I'm also occasionally writing thought leadership about maybe the intersection of life and business. So I tried to do both and it didn't work really well at first. And so I kind of thought to myself, I'm getting enough signal from people saying they want to learn how to write content, they want to learn how to grow on social media, they want to understand how to build systems so that they can create every single day. And I also have this other area of my life in healthcare SaaS where I'm pretty well connected. I've got relationships with venture capital firms. I've got relationships with CEOs. I've built a ton of pipeline. I've got testimonials and recommendations. So I started finding a way to kind of take that healthcare SaaS consulting business I had built and find leads through a different sort of mechanism.
Got it.
And so I started to go maybe more towards that content creation around social media and audience building. At that point in time, that's when my following exploded because there's far fewer people who care about healthcare SaaS than learning how to write on social media, especially in early or mid 2019. So that's how I thought about it, and that proved to be a very good move long term.
Yeah. When I read your content, again, at Kajabi, we're massive fans of it, not just because you're a customer, because there's a lot of like depth into it. There's this element of like how to build content, like the Creator OS and all these things, which are fantastic. There's also this element of like the life that you've built around yourself and how you go about it. So part of it is like, again, how to build content. Part of it is like how a solopreneur can actually work. Would you mind talking about the way you structure, at least at a high level, your business to be scalable, to give you the flexibility that you want in life, like those types of things? Because I think a lot of people want to be the next, make 5, 10, 15, $20 million, and that's a cohort of people. A lot of people just want to do what they love doing and do it in a sustainable way over time. And I think you do a fantastic job of maybe talking about that part of the journey and being kind of building in public quite a bit.
Yeah, I would say I don't think of my business as scalable. And that's okay. Like it's intentionally non-scalable.
That's right.
And I get a lot of flack from that from folks who want to build scalable businesses. They, people talk about revenue a lot. And I think less about revenue. I think more about profit. I think about margins, and I think about really lifestyle first, business second. And so the way that I think about it is I want to do as much as I can in a finite period of time every day so that I can spend the rest of my day doing things that I enjoy. So for example, my business is powered mostly through content. So I write on LinkedIn, I write on Twitter, I post on Instagram, I write on Threads. But those are all, there's all a system. It's just, it's do one idea, do it 4 times, right? And so I've gotten really good at that. So writing that content in my newsletter really doesn't take much more than 3 hours a day, 4 days a week. So really there's 12 hours a day where I'm really, or 12 hours a week, excuse me, where I'm really focused on creating that content. Outside of that, there aren't other moving pieces of my business. The products are built, right? There's no services, so there's no trading time for money. Everything is basically a very simple and unsophisticated funnel. Write content, show people the problem, agitate it a little bit, make them feel the problem, twist the knife, make it a bit existential, because I think it is if you can't figure something out. Tease out the solution, make them an offer and say, if you'd like to solve this problem, I have this product. Make the products accessible, lower cost, easily purchased by anyone who wants to get started, and make them easily consumable. So you can turn it on, you can watch it in 60 minutes, and at the end of 60 minutes, you know exactly what to do next. It's not theoretical, it's not philosophical, it's tactical and actionable. That's my whole business. And could I scale it to 10 or 20? Maybe, if I wanted to hire people and do advertisements. But what I've found over the course of the last 6 years is you can make 500 grand or $1 million or 2 million or 4 million, or you can choose all these different things, and life doesn't get any better. Like it doesn't matter at all. As long as you can save money, move your family forward, afford the things you want to do. Like there isn't a huge gap between those things. And so I don't try and do it really.
That clarity is awesome. So let's talk about the funnel real quick. Like if you, and I know you just described it in some detail, but maybe double click a little bit. Like how do you think about the different stages where, if you're a customer who's going to end up being a Justin Welsh customer of yours, what does a typical funnel look like, or what is the journey you want to take that customer on?
It's very simple. So there's no complexity. There's no email sequences. Like I don't use email sequences at all. So it's really simple. Social media is discovery. It's awareness of my brand.
So that's your top of funnel.
Top of funnel, right? So I go out on social media every day. And I try and write something that generally shines a light on a problem. I want people to lean in and say, I have that problem, or I didn't know I had that problem, right? They're completely problem unaware. Or maybe they're aware of the problem, so they're problem aware. That is all top of funnel. I do that on Twitter. I do that on LinkedIn and all the other places. That to me is just discovery. I just want as many people to see the same headshot, the same name, the same tagline, the same profile every single day. My thought is if I do a really good job at that, I will get them into my newsletter, right? So this is sort of step 2. My newsletter is less about awareness and discovery and more about expertise and authority. So to me, if you can show off your expertise, you can establish authority. So I take my newsletter and it can be consumed. It's called the Saturday Solopreneur. It can be consumed in 4 minutes or less, guaranteed every single Saturday. And my goal is to take one thing that I think people struggle with. And I have kind of a process. It's here's the problem. Here's how most people solve it. Here's why I don't think that works. Here's how I solve it. And here's why I think it works better that way. So I'll walk through the problem. And my goal in that newsletter is, again, expertise and authority. At the end of the newsletter, I position a product, whatever is most relevant to that newsletter issue, and say, if this problem resonates with you, if you like the solution, if you went out and tried it and this little nugget worked, imagine what you can do if I taught you for 75 minutes. And that's literally the entire process.
And so this is all solo initiative, right?
Totally.
Like, was there any experience you had along the way where you were like, I know I want to do this on my own? Or was it, because I think your point around revenue versus profits, we talk a lot about that at Kajabi. I think about it sometimes where people always celebrate revenue. It's kind of a vanity metric, particularly in like entrepreneurship sometimes, because profit is how you eat, right? Like in thinking about, you can bring a lot of revenue, but if your cost of acquisition is really high, or you have a really big team that you have to do payroll for, your profits can diminish. There's like all these dynamics around that. When you were thinking about it for yourself, was that what was top of mind? Was it, hey, I want to make sure this thing is very high margins? Or was it, hey, I don't want to have to be a manager? Or was it a combination? Like, how did you think about that? And were you deliberate about that from the jump?
It was more of the latter.
Okay.
So coming from the last role I had, I was the VP of sales at a company called Patient Pop in Santa Monica, eventually became the chief revenue officer. Awesome experience. Love those guys. Still really close to the team there. But I had a big team. I had, I think, 8 direct reports and 150 reports reporting to those folks in a group of managers. And frankly, I was just like, I was burned out from putting out fires and handling problems. And my wife is really talented. She has a completely different background than me. She's operational, she's logistical. So if I need someone to help with my business, like I can lean very much on my wife, and I do, right? But I don't want to hire anyone because I want to be able to go to Japan whenever I want. And I don't want to have someone say, well, actually, I want to take a vacation, or, I have a problem, or for them to quit, and then you got to fill a gap. And so as the business grew, I noticed that revenue and therefore profit, because there's really no customer acquisition cost minus some software and some time, right? My time. I noticed that profit was going up. And I thought to myself, like, I've reached a point with profit where I don't need any more profit. I don't need to make more than I've made. If I just do this, this is totally fine.
That's freedom.
And I was like, cool, this is exactly what it felt like. I was like, this feels like freedom to be able to make a good profit and not have to manage anyone, not have to ask anyone anything. And so I have no meetings. I choose things like this to do, which are fun and interesting for me. So that's just how I prefer it. It's not for everybody.
Yeah. Did you ever doubt that? Did you ever think about, was it any time when you were kind of building this business that you were like, gosh, it'd be great to have anybody help, a VA or something like that, some kind of infrastructure around you to help like maybe augment part of what you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. And I have a part-time VA, so I do have a little customer service help that I outsource every once in a while. But I did in the beginning, and it wasn't from like, I wouldn't consider it a logistics problem where I was like, oh, I can't do this thing and therefore I need help. It was more of a mental thing. Is this a real business? Right? Like, or am I just a guy who's writing on the internet? And it was kind of like either an ego or a pride thing. Where I was like, if I don't hire someone, or if I don't get 5 people onto my team, I'm not a real business owner. I don't really run a legitimate business. Like at the end of the day, like it's me and my wife and our 3 dogs, and that's who I'm accountable to. And so as long as our family life is going well and everyone's taken care of, and my parents and her parents are doing well, like I don't need anyone's validation that the business, needs to work a different way. So after a while, I'm just like, this is my thing and I like it.
Yeah, it's interesting. a lot of times when people ask, how's the business doing? People talk about, if they don't share revenue, they're like, oh, I have 200 employees or 100 employees or things like that. I think that like that clarity around what you wanted to build and how you're building it, probably just makes it simple. It's like, I know what I'm doing. It's pretty easy. I'm not worried about any of these other things because I got the profit. I have my dogs, my wife, and we get to travel.
Totally. Yeah. And there's a couple of different experiences that I've had that made this model really attractive. Without kind of going into specifics, I'd been at 2 healthcare companies, and there had been multiple kind of things that happened where you could tell someone was trying to legally take advantage of some situation that happened in the company. And I remember watching at the first company, the executive team spend a ton of time in trying to figure out how this kind of thing that didn't really happen became a problem. Yeah. And then at my company, the second company, Patient Pop, like saw some of the same stuff where executives, including myself, had to spend hours of our time in a boardroom trying to figure out how to handle this one person. And I was like, man, this seems like a waste of time.
Yeah,
like, it just seems like a tremendous amount of time, money, energy for something that we shouldn't be spending our time on. Yeah. And I just didn't want to do that in my business. And it kind of repelled me from that model. Yeah. And so it's just me and my wife.
That's great.
Yeah.
What do you do for community? Like we found out, we have tens of thousands of customers on our platform. A lot of them are solopreneurs. A lot of them, honestly, are customers of yours too, which we love. What we find is like when you're doing this kind of online business, it can be very isolating for some people. And they don't necessarily need a team, to your point, but they want to be able to talk to other people who are building similar things to where they are or living a kind of lifestyle they are. Yeah. How do you think about that? And how do you think about community, not just for people who are Justin Welsh customers, but for yourself even, as an entrepreneur, as an online business owner? How do you manage that?
Yeah, there's sort of a bunch of different things, but I'll kind of start on my side, right? Yeah. So for me, I live in a very small town up, north of New York City, about 3 hours up near Woodstock. And so I have my local community. I'm very plugged into that community, a bunch of friends. The great thing is none of the people that I'm around are like creators or not on social media. Yeah. They don't know what I do, which is fantastic. So when I talk about it. So it's just a really cool community of people that are interesting. Yeah. So that's like my primary personal community. I also go on retreats with a lot of folks sort of in my, I guess what you might call industry. Yeah. So, I've had the fortune of going on a retreat in Mexico with Sahil Bloom and Chris Pronger, who's an NHL hockey great, and a bunch of other really interesting entrepreneurs. And, getting a chance to pick their brains and learn their systems and see the challenges and problems they were facing and how they solve them. But I also do a lot of local stuff that both benefits me and the folks who follow me and are my customers. I have a membership called Unsubscribe, which is really around this intersection of life and business, which is how do you build a great life first and then support it with a business instead of building a business and then trying to cram your life in the little gaps that open up. And so my wife and I actually travel around the country so far and pretty soon around the world. And we meet with customers, with folks who are part of Unsubscribe. We've done one actually in London, San Francisco, Chicago. We're doing one in Austin and Toronto. And then we'll be doing Lisbon and part of Europe in the upcoming winter months. And that keeps me really close to my customer, right? It keeps them close to me, right? Yeah. You get to be amongst the customers, which is really fun because you hear, man, I wish you would do this differently, or I really like how you're doing this one thing, and it's just good business intel. Yeah. But that sort of holistically is how I build community. There's personal, there's professional, and then there's also being with my customers. Yeah. And instead of just saying, here's an email survey, I get out and try and host intimate dinners and spend time with them.
Yeah. How long have you had that membership?
About almost 4 months.
Oh, it's relatively new.
Yeah, it's very new. And we've done, 4 or 5 dinners, and we're going to do dinner 5 and 6 here upcoming. And the feedback's been awesome.
That's great. And what was the inspiration for that? Like, because again, your business in 2019, you're 4 or 5 years in. Like when you thought about the evolution of your business, like how did you think about expanding it into this? Because this is a bit less, you got to be there in person. Yeah. Like there's like an element of like people want Justin IRL for these types of events, I'd imagine. And it kind of takes you away from just writing and just doing those things. Like how did you think about that evolution?
Here's a really cool thing about being just a one-person business. Yeah. Is you don't have to have like a deep strategic thought behind everything you do. Yeah. I was talking to my wife one day and I was like, I don't want to build a full-fledged community because I have high anxiety, and when I have like a Slack group or a group in a chat room that's like 10 different rooms and it's on 24/7, 365, that's just like not good for my brain. Like I struggle to sleep that way. It's always going in the background. So I'm just like, how do I do something simple? One chat room, and like the real sort of purpose and structure behind it are virtual events and live events. And so we just kind of cobbled something together. We started it and I thought it'd be really interesting if instead of sending out these random surveys or asking people to reply to the newsletter, if I spent 3.5 hours in a room with people who were some of my best customers. And I thought that by doing that, sure, time, money, energy, is it the smartest move from a scalability perspective? Of course not. But like the feedback that I've gotten from these intimate dinners has been much more valuable than like a click button survey. And so I had a hypothesis that it would be super valuable for my business. And also that these folks would tell me like, here's what we wish you would build next. And so gathering all that data in person and also just like fostering deeper connections and spending more time with, you know, starter entrepreneurs or folks who are maybe in their first or second year and are trying to figure out that next step is just like personally fulfilling.
Yeah. We take that really seriously too. Like when you think about the ability to get in front of customers, talk to them, obviously socialize with them, make sure they know the team, but also getting their feedback, like this is something you need to fix. We really like this. It can impact your product roadmap. So like, okay, the audience or the customer base is telling me something, and I've heard this from 5, 10, in our case, thousands of people. Let's make sure we do that and do it well. So it gives you a bit of clarity on where you're going as well, which we find fascinating. And it's really hard to do just by a survey because surveys are very impersonal.
I would imagine you get probably greater feedback at Kajabi Here Live than you do from a random email survey.
Absolutely. And it's there's a lot of energy around it too. You can see people's eyes. It's really cool. So we're all in the business of knowledge, experience, and expertise, and the ability to kind of give it to people and hopefully change their lives, right? There's obviously a monetary element of this, which is like, hey, I'm able to make a living, and I think you talk a lot about that. But there's this other element of it where you're actually like servicing real people and causing and hopefully igniting real change in their lives. And when you think of all thousands of people who've interacted with you or taken your courses or whatever they've learned from you, is there something like your proudest moment or feedback or testimonial when you've been like, man, this makes it, like all the profit and stuff is great, but this really makes it worth it?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different people that kind of come to mind. One is like Ant Natoli. He started a little sales consulting business that blew up and did really well. He works for LinkedIn and runs this on the side now. And
great.
Zach Wilson is another guy who I think is a former Airbnb guy who does a huge data sort of cohort data experience, which is really cool. And then Toby Olawole. So he is a really cool entrepreneur. He's Canadian. And he had been messaging me maybe 3.5 years ago and was like, love your stuff, love your content. I'm trying to do this thing where I'm, sharing people how they can build a great life too. And I was like, yeah, cool, man. Like keep going, do your thing. And then he pings me every year and he's just like, business is taking off. It's 500K, it's $1 million, it's $2 million. And then he wrote me about actually more like 9 months ago. And he was like, hey man, I just crossed like the $2 million mark. I want to thank you so much. He's like, I'm in Paris right now and I'm just like celebrating. And I was like, I'm in Paris too. And so we got lunch together near where I was staying and started this great relationship. He just did a virtual workshop for my community. So like there's a bunch of different folks that will have grown like these big 6- and 7-figure businesses. And that's cool, right? It's cool to see someone who, didn't have a business and turns it into one. More thrilling, I think, to me is like I have this inbox where I save these emails, and it's not the hey man, I made $1 million kind of email. There's a lot of people who are like, was really struggling to pay my bills, started a little side hustle. I'm making $2,000 a month doing it, and I'm like paying my mortgage. Awesome. If I could do that 100 times over, 1,000 times over, like those are really interesting. Had a call on the other day, just a 15-minute call. Someone booked a call with me. And I didn't recognize the name. And I got on the phone or the Zoom, and it was a guy, he's from Nigeria. And he was saying, I'm calling you. I have no questions. I wanted to talk to you. I'm sitting on my house on a golf course. And he said, nobody in Nigeria that I know lives on this golf course except for politicians.
Unbelievable.
But I started a business where I acquire domain names that I know will be popular. And I sell them to enterprise businesses in the US. And he's like, I golf every day, 5 days a week. And like those stories I like. One thing I really focus on, it's why I have purchase power parity on a lot of my products, is it's cool when you can help somebody who can make an extra $2,000. To me, and maybe this comes from like my parents are relatively philanthropic. Like, I like when I hear from people in different countries who are like, hey man, I went from like lower economic status to very high economic status very quickly, following some of the things that you're doing, making US dollars, like, and change their entire family's trajectory. Like, those stories, I think, for some reason, they're not more important. They just hit a little bit harder with me. And so I track those a lot.
So when you say purchasing power parity, can you explain what that means? I think that would be really interesting for people, particularly as they think about, to your point, international expansion and how you price your products.
Yeah. So most of my products are relatively low cost. So it doesn't happen on all my products, but I have one expensive product. And the way that I think about it is, if you're in, let's say, Nigeria, like using this guy as an example, $879 for a product is very, very expensive.
Very expensive.
And I don't think that knowledge should be limited to people based on their economic capability. So I do purchase power parity, which means I try and bring it down, let's say 80% if you're in that country. I did that for all my launches because I want to make sure that if you're in India or Pakistan or Nigeria or Mexico or wherever you're living, that you can get it at an equivalent price so that you don't feel like you don't have access to that knowledge. And that has been really meaningful to a lot of people. That's maybe the second or third most common sort of compliment I get is, thank you for making this affordable.
That's great.
And I think if you sell digital products, you're missing a lot of revenue, happy customers, word of mouth. If you don't do that, you've recorded the product already. Make it easy for people to get it, because if an extra 10,000 people can buy it, you're impacting an extra 10,000 lives. And of course, I'm not Mother Teresa, right? I'm also thinking about it through a marketing lens. It's 10,000 more people who are going to tell another 10,000 folks about that. And so I think about it through those two lenses, if you will.
It's like the second or third order effects of it. If that guy in Nigeria, he's on a golf course golfing, but he golfs with some friends and he tells them Justin Welsh did this thing, it just has this virality that you're not accounting for if you're just thinking about the purchase by itself.
100%.
Yeah. When you think about your tech stack, like 2019 to 2025, what did it kind of start with, and how has it evolved over time? And how does that play into like how you've built your business?
Yeah. It started really simply. It started on Card and Gumroad. It was just a simple one-page website and a Gumroad widget that I stuck on there. And that worked. It worked well. Conversion was good. They took a pretty hefty percentage, which I didn't love, but I was like, this is easy. I'm not technical. I can get this set up very quickly.
Easy to get started.
Easy to get started. And eventually it moved to full suite Kajabi. So I used Kajabi for everything: landing pages, email, website, contacts, everything. All my courses live in Kajabi. And as it grew, I had this idea that, because I came from a business, the healthcare business that I ran was like an all-in-one solution for healthcare providers to help them market their practice. The Kajabi for healthcare is what it was, basically. I always saw that as a benefit. Somewhere along the line, I became convinced that in order to, at that time, grow and scale my business, I would need to find the best point solution for every single thing that I wanted to do. Do I think there is benefit in doing that sometimes? Sure, right? Ultimately, what it's created is bloat, right? So tech bloat, spending bloat, and really the thing that I miss from being all in one with Kajabi, and this is, I think, kind of the impetus for why I reached out to you guys, is I started to lose some of the visibility into the data that I needed to effectively run my business. I'm a big signal and data person, and just being a chief revenue officer, that's how you operate. And when you're integrating all this stuff through Zapier and it's kind of all clunky and stuck together, you start to say, I had a really great day today, but I don't know why. I had a really crappy week last week. I don't know why. And that visibility, that loss of visibility has become more and more problematic. And I think as tools like Kajabi expand into offering a best-in-class sort of point solution for all the different things that you do, the idea to simplify becomes extremely attractive.
I think particularly for your business, but in general, as you get more and more sophisticated, to your point, you're like, oh gosh, well, I can afford this thing, but there's an administrative burden of it as well. Like you're switching between different software pieces, the costs like add up. There's not real connectivity between those. So this ability to kind of like I don't know, solidify on one, and hopefully that solves the vast majority of your problems. But there are moments when you're like, hey, I need a point solution to go deep on this for whatever reason. And you just want to make sure a Kajabi or any platform plays well with that too.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm fortunate to have been a part at an executive level of multiple startups because you learn a really good skill.
Yeah.
And that skill is to ask yourself, what happens when X happens? So like, for example, let's imagine I'm using Kajabi and you say, I wanna do a community somewhere else, right? Oh, cool. That's fine. You just set it up and they just buy here and then you just pipe them in there.
Yeah.
Okay, but what happens when they churn? How do you get them out?
Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't really think of that, right?
Yeah.
What happens when a payment bounces?
Yeah.
What happens next? Like, how do you send them an email?
Yeah.
Like and there's 100 of those scenarios.
Oh, yeah.
And so one thing that I like to think that I'm relatively good at is asking all the outlier questions that seem like, oh, one outlier here and one outlier there, but the aggregate total of those outliers is 100 problems.
Yeah.
And so if you don't think through that effectively,
Yeah.
You fail or you create a mess.
Yeah.
And so having a system that's completely integrated, will there always be limitations at some point when you go with an all-in-one? I believe the answer is at some point, yes. Mm-hmm. Will it work seamlessly and better 95 to 99% of the time? 100%.
So what's a move you've made in business that maybe at the time felt like too risky, but actually turned out to be pivotal or impactful in your business over time?
Yeah, I think one move that I made was I had read and done a bunch of research on selling digital products. And every single person that I talked to, every person or every book that I read, everything is like, it's just as easy to sell something for $2,500 as it is for $25. That is not true.
Yeah.
It's just not true. Right. It's much easier to sell something for $25.
Yeah.
And when I built my first product, I didn't feel confident. I didn't know what to price it at. I had no idea what was my knowledge worth. And so I charged $50. Mm-hmm. And that seemed risky. Mm-hmm. What if all these people buy it and I can never sell anything ever again? You know, I don't make a lot of money and all this jazz. What I found is that instead of being risky, it was one of the best moves I made. I called it my trust tripwire. Mm-hmm. People came in, a little less than 2,000 people bought my first product back in 2020. It was $50 and they loved it. And I was like emailing with some folks and they were saying, hey man, this could have been $500. This could have been $5,000. And I was like, okay, interesting. So if you give someone 100 or 1,000x value, the very first time you produce something at a really low cost, what you build is goodwill, right? A reputation. Yeah. And then you build this customer pool that will 100% buy the next thing that you put out at $250 or $500. Right. And so instead of launching it right into this sort of high ticket offer that sort of everyone talks about, I did it incrementally. And to me, that seemed risky at first. And I think it was one of the best and smartest things that I did over time.
So did you have any hesitation with digital products? Like a lot of creators we talk to are like, look, I give everything away for free. And that's the brand I have. There's an element of like, I have trust with my audience. And then sometimes when people insert a digital product, they feel like they're violating some of that. Did you have any of that sentiment at all? Or were you kind of knew that this is the path you were going on from day one?
No.
Okay.
I didn't feel uncomfortable doing a digital product. Pricing is a different story, but like I came from a sales background.
Oh yeah.
So my thought was, if you read all of my content online for free, you should get a tremendous amount of value.
Yeah.
If you want the implementation, if you want the shortcut, right, you have to pay for that. Yeah. So I tell people all the time, if you want to understand how I use LinkedIn or how I create a content framework or how I build a digital product, that stuff's all on the internet for free. You can go find it. I've written about every single step. It will take you a long time. You'll spend hours cobbling together all the information, trying to get it into the right order, and then trying to implement it, taking all the stuff out.
That's fascinating.
Or you could pay me $79 and save yourself 10 hours a time, 20 hours a time, watch 75-minute video and get started.
Yeah.
And for most people, that 79 or 97 or $150 is well worth the just like, I want to get started today.
That's super cool. So we talked about, like, say it's a $50 offer, $100 offer to start.
Yeah.
What are the other things that happen thereafter that, one, they're kind of upsells or different versions of digital products or digital access to you? And then two, do you think about that, like the LTV or the lifetime value of the customer? And how do you think about that as you're building your business? Like, how is it structured?
So I come from, the chief revenue officer background, so I understand LTV to CAC and all that stuff, but I don't have much of a spend in my business.
Yeah.
So the LTV doesn't have to be a significant amount. It just has to be, what I think about is like, what is the lifetime value of a customer? If I look and they say, okay, they spent $1,048 with me, I can say for most of my customers, I might spend $20 to.
And that's a CAC, customer acquisition cost. You're spending about $20.
Cost, right.
Yeah.
So I don't have to think about it that much because I don't really have that many costs.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is I want to use my main product as a Trojan horse to something else that feels almost like a downsell, but is more of kind of that continuity offer. So for example, if you buy the LinkedIn operating system and you buy it for $79, that's really affordable. And since it doesn't cost me anything other than the little bit of software that I use in my time, there's not really much of a customer acquisition cost. My margins are 91%, right? And so, okay, $179, $97 or whatever it happens to be priced at that day. They buy it and then I say, hey, if you want to get started really quickly, every month I send 5 social media templates you can use to like get started without thinking about it. $9 a month. The average customer stays about 13 months on that product. So you're looking at another, $117 plus, 97 is what, 203, 206, something like that.
Totally.
And so I might spend, with 45,000 customers, I might spend $15 a customer and you see what, 20x return on that.
Unreal.
So for me, I don't do advertisements.
Yeah.
So I don't have to look at like $1 in, $3 out.
Yeah.
And so it's really just a return on my time. And so I think about one product and then generally like an ancillary product that helps them do well, that is paid for on a monthly basis so I can continually get that revenue downstream.
That's great. So outside of pricing, if you could go back and somebody's launching their first digital product or Justin's doing his first digital product, like what's one piece of advice you'd like whisper in their ear to be like, you need to think about this? Because I think we talk about pricing, but what else is there?
Pick something specific and get someone from point A to point B easily.
Okay.
So for example, my one course, Creator MBA, it needs to be comprehensive because it covers a comprehensive variety of topics. It's really about how to start an online business, but it's long. It's 19 hours long. It's 111 lessons. And I know that's probably not the best way to do something. The easiest way to get started and probably the best way is to break your courses into small outcomes-based courses. So rather than like build a business, it should be like set up your lead generation funnel. That should be one course, right? Learn how to understand the data you get from your customers and create a customer avatar. That can be its own standalone course. The more that someone says, I have a very specific problem, and if I solve it, it will unlock other problems down the road, the more you can create a course. So for example, take building a business, for example. If you want to build a business online, I have a hypothesis that you should create attention first. So rather than making like how to use social media as a module inside of that course, the first thing that you should do is teach somebody to get attention for the skill that they have. And maybe even before attention is like how to identify the right skill to monetize. So these are all sort of in this order. And I would deliver those courses not just in that order, but also from a price sort of thought process. Is like the first one is very cheap. People use it. They love it. They unlock that early problem and they're like, oh man, now I know what expertise I should monetize. How do I get attention for that now? Well, here's another thing that unlocks that next problem. So I think if I were to give someone one piece of advice, it's think incrementally. What's that early narrow problem that people need to solve in order to unlock a wider and more expensive problem down the road? Make that course short, to the point, affordable, and make sure that it's outcomes based so that when someone watches it, they actually get the intended outcome.
Yeah, that's great. You've coached a lot of people, obviously, in this, or you interact with a lot of your customers. Over time, you've coached a lot of people, I think, as well. Like, what are 3 things that you think people come to you and they need to unlearn before they actually can achieve the success that they want, what they want as a creator or as an entrepreneur or somebody who's building an online business?
It's a really good question. I think the first thing they have to unlearn is this idea that their knowledge isn't valuable.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
I mean, I went through this, right? So I'll give you an example. I helped build a healthcare business from its first dollar to 70 million in recurring looking back on that, it's obvious that in that journey, over 4.5 or 5 years, that I acquired some knowledge that should be valuable.
Yeah.
But I was never the CEO.
Yeah.
And so when I started my consulting business, I was like, what am I going to teach the CEO, right? That's an important position. Who am I? I was just the guy running sales. So I felt this nervousness. I felt anxiety. I felt imposter syndrome until I got on the phone or on a Zoom call and found out that, I had all my spreadsheets ready, and like they came and they're like, what's a customer avatar? How do I set up my first demand generation funnel, or how do I hire my first SDR? And I was like, wow, these are problems I solved in the first 6 months of my role.
And these are like CEOs who are asking relatively basic
100%.
questions, right?
Yep.
So it tells you like, you don't know until you know.
The things that you and I and everybody who's listening to this know, we know them so well over time that we can't imagine a world in which somebody doesn't know that thing.
Yeah, you take them for granted.
And so you have to unlearn the fact that what seems like riding a bike for you is very, very difficult for somebody else. That is what I would say is problem number one. Problem number two is people are really attached to the idea that they are multifaceted. And of course they are. I don't just have an interest in building online businesses. That's not my only interest in the world, right? I like lots of other things. I have hobbies, I have personal interests. But if you want to start to get some attention online, you have to stay relatively focused, right? And I always teach people, like, if you talk about how to do search engine optimization for physical flower shops, talk about that every day. Don't talk about here's how to do SEO for a flower shop one day, and then your favorite Italian food, and then a picture of your kid, and then we went to the mountains with my dog. Like, after a while, it just becomes so disconnected that people can't remember, well, who is this person?
Yeah. What does he represent?
What do you represent?
Yeah.
Like, what's the problem that you solve? Who are you specifically? Who do you help specifically? And what problem do you help them solve specifically? If people can't answer that just by looking at your face or your headshot or your profile, I think you're really going to struggle. And then the last thing that I would suggest that people really struggle with is putting the cart before the horse when it comes to products. They all want to launch courses because it seems easiest. You don't have to trade your time for money. But trading your time for money is where you learn all the stuff that goes into the product. Right? You can't create a product unless you've helped 100 customers solve a particular problem. Because once you've solved that problem over and over and over again, you start to recognize the patterns in teaching and helping that lead to the outcomes that you're intending. So trade your time for money. It's not a race, it's a marathon. Spend that time, trade that time for money, learn everything, figure out how to package it up really neatly, efficiently, and effectively, and then build your product. Those are like the three things I see people struggle with most often.
That's really cool. The second part you talked about there resonates quite a bit too. It's like the kind of content you're creating, and which, but it can't be really sporadic because it ends up, you don't really represent anything. When I think about that, what I hear is like, you're actually not building a brand, right? Do you think of yourself as a brand, and like, how has that helped you or hurt you? Or like, what is your thought process around that?
I think of myself as a character.
As a character?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I was just reading something that's so funny. Jason Pfeiffer, the editor-in-chief at Entrepreneur Magazine, just wrote about this morning. And it really resonated with me when I saw it online. I am multifaceted. I have a wife and 3 dogs, and we like to drink craft beer and wine, and we like to go and be foodies and travel and do all these different things, sports. But I rarely, if ever, talk about that stuff.
I mean, I follow your content. I never see it.
Never.
I hear about your family and stuff and your dogs, but it's like a picture of you.
In the context of like, here's maybe something related to business.
Totally.
I don't talk about anything that's unrelated to business. Do I have strong opinions? Do I have different lenses through which information is pushed through? 100%. But I try and remain focused on the thing that I talk about and the problem that I solve, because I want people to say, oh, here comes a piece of content from Justin. I know with 100% certainty what I'm going to get. When folks meet me in real life, like some of these dinners that I'm doing, I think they're always surprised. I have a relatively serious looking headshot. I try and write relatively seriously, but I'm a very unserious person.
You're just a guy from Cleveland.
Just a regular old person from Cleveland. And I think they're always surprised. And so to me, that's a character. I aligned this character with what I thought would be the most effective way to deliver the information that would help people. And so that's how it was created.
And it has that character, like what has that done for you over time? Because I always think about it like if your character, your brand has a compounding effects over time. So people tell other people about Justin Welsh, and over time, that CAC or that customer acquisition cost actually starts going down.
Yeah.
Like, can you talk about that dynamic? And have you seen that in your business over time?
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. So I track, I do a decent job of tracking the sources from where my sales come from.
Yeah.
And like, I think I have to do the quick head math. Probably about 15 to 18% of my course sales alone have come from recommendation through students.
Amazing.
And to me, that speaks volumes that the courses are effective in helping people achieve the outcomes. They're accessible, means they're probably priced relatively correctly, and that people feel confident referring me as a teacher. Because I don't actually think they're selling the LinkedIn operating system or the Creator MBA. They're saying, Justin is the guy that you want to learn from if you're going to do this thing. There's a billion people you can learn these things from, right?
That's right.
And I hope that in that sea of teachers, someone says, Justin makes the complex simple. He gives it to you directly and quickly, right? When you watch my courses, there's no production value. I don't do any editing. It's just me sitting in a chair being like, in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to teach you how to do this very specific thing. And if I haven't, I've failed.
Yeah.
And from the reviews that I get, 99% of people seem to think that the outcomes are what I promised.
That's great. So you talked about this a little bit around, hey, you could find this content, like a lot of people writing the same stuff and all these things. In a world of AI, right? And we think about this a lot for our business, but also for our creators and our customers and our heroes. How do you see yourself taking advantage of this? Do you think of like, this is the great commoditization and all of a sudden content's going to be even more easily created. As a result, things are going to go down? Or how do you think about navigating these next couple of years? And how are you maybe leveraging AI now? And how do you imagine doing it in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be unrealistic to think that AI won't take a bite out of knowledge businesses, right? I'm already seeing it. It's already happening. Here's the interesting thing about AI. And by the way, I use it all the time. I think it's a fantastic tool. I use it to help ideate. I use it to help edit. If I don't know how to say something the right way, I use it to help do that. I use it to help me think through what product to build next, look at all my data, tell me what's working and what's not. There's a million use cases, and it's super helpful for a solopreneur. Here's where I think people get tricked with it, at least as it exists today.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And it may change tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's say someone wants to do something like learn how to, just take LinkedIn again. They want to learn how to use LinkedIn effectively. Well, what's easier? Watching me for 75 minutes and taking notes and then trying, or just going into ChatGPT and saying, oh, give me a strategy, okay? You both get output from each of those products. ChatGPT will give you output and I will give you output. You don't know which works until you try them. But most people will take the output and say, I've solved my problem. I now have output, direction, and a strategy. Who cares if it's not the right one or if it doesn't work, right? And the funny thing is I'll often punch in like, how would you do this if you were me? And they'll give me ideas and instructions. And I'll say, I already know this doesn't work because I know how that platform works.
It's an expertise element of it.
It's an expertise element. It's an experience element. It's having gone through all the trials and tribulations, seen every single problem, overcome all the challenges, and ultimately built something sustainable. Sure, can ChatGPT today point you in the right direction? Maybe. Will it give you all the things you need to succeed in the way you want to succeed? Probably not, but it will feel like you're doing something.
Yeah, that's really
And so I think that's the big gap today.
Yeah. Oren John, who's another Kajabi customer, he was talking to us a couple of days ago, and he talked about this concept of content TAM. And the idea really is like he's pretty relatively agnostic about where he puts content, right? So he's got YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all these places where he puts content, but he has this idea of like, I have an idea, and the question is, how do I put it into different formats that resonates with the different audiences, right? So carousels for X, this for Y. How do you think about that in terms of the content that you're creating? And I know it's mostly written, but like, How have you and I think you have a YouTube channel. Like how have you navigated that piece of it? Is like one piece of content, how do I splice it up and make sure it resonates with different audiences on different platforms?
I don't.
You don't?
I do not. And I don't actually have a YouTube channel. I do no video content. Okay. And so like I just gave a talk at this kind of gathering of entrepreneurs. And I said, all the algorithms are always changing. LinkedIn's changed, X has changed, YouTube's, I would assume, changes, Instagram changes. If you reinvent every single thing that you do every time something changes, then you're constantly becoming a new creator and a new person. Maybe there's good things in doing that. Don't get me wrong to say we try something different to see what works. And of course I do that. But to me, the way that I think about it is what's worked forever in human psychology, marketing, sales, message delivery. I try and take the basics, the fundamentals, the foundations, and do those really well in a format that I like. Because to me, the thing that separates myself from some other creators is I've been writing on LinkedIn since October of 2018, and that's now almost 7 years, and I haven't missed a single day. So I've never missed in over 2,200 days. And there's a consistency element to producing at the same day, same time, same platform. You can only do that if you like what you do. I like to write in a specific way. I like to use specific images. I don't like to be on video, so I'm not going to do it. So I choose things that are self-satisfying, and I assume that by being satisfying to me, that I will continue to be consistent in doing those things. So that's all to say, great, carousels become the rage on here. I don't want to figure that out. So I'm going to continue to produce my message in a way that I know resonates and has resonated with people for 100 years, not just 100 days.
So when you think about like the business you've built, it's essentially like, how do you monetize content, right? And how do you monetize content and service customers? What's one thing you wish people would recognize or understand about the transition there of like building content is one thing, but monetizing and building a business is another? Like, is there something you think a lot of creators who actually get to the success part, like don't admit about that journey? And what would that be?
Yes. Each channel or source has its own ceiling, right? You can unlock ceilings through advertisements. There are things that you can do. But to me, I think through how do people buy things? So it's not just like I write on LinkedIn and then I produce a product and I hope to God this product sells 100 times a day for the next 10 years. It's most likely not going to happen. So for me, it's like, all right, how do I take one channel and maximize the impact that I have on that channel? I start there, right? So for me, it was only LinkedIn and writing about building businesses.
And when you say ceiling, you mean like TAM or total addressable market.
Total the number of customers who might buy that product today. Right. I mean, it's gonna reach a certain number, and like your follower, your impressions, they cap out. You can of course grow over time and things like that, but like it doesn't go from one course a day to 1,000. It might go from 1 to 5 to 10, but you might cap out at you can only sell 40. Right. Okay, cool. So you cap out at selling 40. All right. How do I unlock a new channel? Well, that becomes, for me, it was Twitter in October of 2021. So 3 years later, I maximized my primary channel first, and then I opened up a secondary channel. And then I took all the lessons that I had learned from maximizing my primary channel and brought it over to the secondary one. Ran the same playbook, released a second product, and suddenly I was selling 10 or 15 courses there. You add that to the 40 I was selling on LinkedIn, now the business is incrementally bigger, right? Okay, cool. I found out that X had a little bit of a lower ceiling, or Twitter at the time, than LinkedIn did. So where do you go next? Started building on Instagram, right?
Great.
2, 3, 4 courses here or there. So it's like, okay, you kind of milk that and you're like, this isn't really worth the time. So how do I make sure that I'm not creating for this platform? It's just a repurposed pool of stuff I'm already doing, right? I get a little growth from there.
How do you do written content on Instagram? Like what?
Take the tweet, screenshot it.
That's it.
Add the context above, that same thing that goes on LinkedIn, and put it on Instagram.
Great.
Grown to 80,000 followers pretty quickly.
Oh, great.
And then the next thing I was like, well, what about people who are discovering me organically? How can I position myself there? So started thinking about SEO, went down the SEO rabbit hole, added another 10, 15, 20 courses. It's just this incremental sort of what I would call like a bolt-on strategy, taking everything that you learned from your previous experience in different channels and making sure, okay, I think I think this 70% would translate and help me unlock this next channel. For me, it's a game of unlocking multiple channels. That to me is how you build a predictable business, maybe not a scalable one, because at some point, if you can't get out of one primary channel, you might struggle. That's how I think about it.
Yeah. How has Threads been for you?
I don't really spend much time there.
You don't? Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I basically take what goes on Twitter and I put it over on Threads, and like I have 45,000 followers there, but I don't do much selling or anything. To me, that's what I call a social proof point.
Yeah.
So the more social proof points you have, the more someone is likely to take you seriously. So for example, if you come to my LinkedIn, you say, Justin has 780,000 followers. You might go, okay, but is this a one-trick pony? Go check him out on X. Oh, he's got 550,000 followers. Lots of people seem to think what this person has to say is mildly important in some way.
Social validation to some degree.
Social validation. Yeah. Instagram, I don't make many sales out of, but if you go over there and you also see that I have a decent amount of followers, it's one more sort of feather in your cap for saying, you know what, this guy is someone I should take seriously. And to me, that's how I think about Threads.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as you think about your business end of this year, going into next year and the years after, is there another platform that you're eyeing or another way of distribution that you're thinking about that's emerging or that you're testing? Like, how do you think about your business going forward?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, you know, doing stuff like this is actually like an interesting test for me because I don't do a lot of video. And when I do, people say, it was really fun to see you on video. I didn't know what you sounded like, or, you know, you're just your face I see all the time. Or I get that a lot in these in-person dinners that we're doing. It's like, you're so different than I thought you would be. And so that
headshot's serious that you got.
Yeah, right. I was like, I'm trying to be kind and nice and fun. And so I'm doing these experiments with video right now to say, is YouTube something I would be interested in trying? I don't love being on video, but I didn't used to love writing. So I wonder if I could put myself in an uncomfortable position and unlock two things: growth for my business and something I actually enjoy. And I look at friends of mine like Dan Coe, who do a really good job of translating the things that he's written into video and audio. And he doesn't have crazy production value. It looks beautiful, but it's not, you know, it's not this amazing, I would imagine, multi-$100,000 setup. And so I think when I see guys like him, he inspires me to want to do that. And since a lot of people, it seems to resonate with them, that's likely the next channel that I would try. But I also might do something totally different and just pivot into a whole nother different business.
Yeah, that's the best part about solopreneurship. You said it earlier.
Totally.
It's like you can just do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Just go and do.
I've been a salesperson, an executive. I've written about healthcare. I've written about LinkedIn. I've written about solopreneurship. I have like a 5-year shelf life in everything I do. I get relatively bored and I end up pivoting and doing something new.
Awesome. All right, Justin, we got this segment we call The Thing That, and it's pretty self-evident in the name. I'm going to say the thing that X, Y, and Z, and we want to see what your reaction is.
Okay.
The thing that you're most proud of that no one claps for.
2,700 emails in my inbox that I've saved from people telling me that I've made a meaningful impact on their life.
That's beautiful. The thing that no one warned you about creating online content.
Yeah, that people are angry and mean, and that as confident and self-assured as you are, one nasty comment stings worse in terms of impact than 99 helpful comments feel good, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Is there a specific platform that you feel like creates more of that negativity versus ones that are more positive?
Yeah, X.
X, got it.
Yeah, sure.
The thing that made you fall back in love with your work.
Oh, it was when I found out that I could write about something that I was really, I don't know if the word isn't locally, but like recently passionate about, which is I always wrote about solopreneurship and like social media. And then I really found myself going down this rabbit hole of like intentional life design and the balance of life and business. And I thought, nobody's going to care about that. And so I started writing about it just to test the waters. And people were like, we really like this. And I was like, oh, that's really surprising because I like writing about this. And so just opening up this new sort of newsletter I have called Unsubscribe and getting a chance to share non-tactical advice and just how I think about life and business has been a blast.
That's great.
Yeah.
The thing that no one tells you when you hit 7 figures.
It doesn't matter. Like your whole life, nothing in your life changes. It's all the same.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, Justin, on Creator Commerce, we always like to end with the creator assignment. This is an opportunity for the creator to tell our audience some homework assignment for them to be able to accomplish over the next couple of weeks.
Okay. So one of the biggest problems that I see creators deal with is that they want to build digital products, but they spend 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, sometimes even 6 months working insanely hard to build a product. They launch and they have crickets, right? They get 0 sales, and that month or 3 months or 6 months is wasted time, right? Here's what I would do instead. Build a landing page, a simple one on Kajabi. Send all of your social media traffic to that page for, let's say, 1 week. Ask them very simple questions. Start with an A or B question. What is the primary challenge that you are trying to solve? A or B? Next, ask them, what have you tried to solve that? A, B, C, or D, right? The third question you want to ask is, why didn't it work? Give them 3 or 4 choices that you know why something normally doesn't work. And then lastly, ask them, what would you like to see in a solution? A, B, C, or D? Your final question is going to be a free-form text question where you say, would you like to add any additional thoughts or sentences to your answer, right? Here's what you're going to collect. You're going to collect a bunch of data on the problems people have, why they failed in solving it, and exactly how they want to solve it. You're also going to get some great free-form text data that you can pipe into ChatGPT or Claude or any AI of your choice, and it's literally going to tell you the exact product that your audience wants to buy. So don't waste your time building something without having that information at your fingertips, and you will build a better, more effective, more purchasable product.
Justin Welsh, thank you so much for coming on Creator Commerce. This has been awesome.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Anytime. I just wrapped a conversation with Justin, and man, his perspective on scalability was refreshing. He reminded us that some of the most meaningful actions, like in-person conversations with customers, aren't scalable, and that's okay. We embraced that mindset at Kajabi as a way to stay close to our creator community. What stood out even more was how Justin built an entire empire around the idea that scale isn't always the goal. Instead of chasing revenue, he prioritizes profit and lifestyle, anchored by the right funnel, technology, and systems. It's a powerful reminder that growth should be defined on your own terms. Thank you to my guest, Justin Welsh, for joining me today. And most importantly, thank you for joining us. It's time for us to go, but it's time for you to build. It's time for you to create. Until next time. Creator Commerce is produced by Ash Jones, Robin Hopkins, and Kate Anderson. Production support is by Kate Escarcega. Production design is by Charlene T. The show is edited by Meltem Sarıçıçek. Original music and sound design is by Monogram Sound. This show was filmed and recorded by Tyler Henderson and Ash Jones and is a Winston Francois production for Kajabi.